So as of recent, Manchester United have been strongly linked with a move for Fiorentina's 26-year-old Moroccan defensive midfielder, Sofyan Amrabat, who's shone at the World Cup with Morocco, looking like a North African Gennaro Gattuso, as Morocco got to the semi-finals in Qatar. Looking at his last season's FB Ref report when compared against every other midfielder in Europe's top 5 leagues, we can see that Amrabat is producing elite level ball progression metrics, ranking in the 98th percentile or higher for both his medium and long pass completion rate, whilst also sitting in the 92nd percentile for his total progressive passing distance, passes into the final third, and his overall progressive passes as well, whilst also sitting in the 75th percentile for his passes into the penalty area. And so this tells us that certainly from a statistical point of view, Sofyan Amrabat is competing with the elite level of ball progressive midfielders in Europe. But before I go any further, remember to subscribe to the channel and check out my Patreon podcast, which will be linked below. But also, if you want cheap, good quality football jerseys for the new season or retro jerseys from the past 40 years, then check out jerseyfifa.com. A link will be in my Instagram bio, and if you use coupon code Atlantis, you should get a discount as well. I'll leave my Instagram at the top of the description and comment section, and a link will be in my Instagram bio. And from watching him play, I would definitely say that it's his long passing ability, which is his eye-catching attribute, which enables him to pick up the ball in front of the opposition midfield line, and with one long raking pass he's able to switch the attack to the other flank, an elite level attribute for a defensive midfielder to have. But I would say that his short passing can improve, as I just don't think he's as good as players like Moises Caicedo or Ibrahim Sangare when it comes to connecting sequences of short passes, and this is reflected by his short pass completion rate being significantly lower than his medium or long pass completion rates. And to be fair, that may be because he's playing in a Fiorentina team who don't prioritise ball retention as much as sides in the Premier League like Brighton do, or even clubs like PSV or Ajax do. And so if Amrabat was to make the move to Old Trafford, I do think this could be the area of his game that he massively improves on. We can also compare Amrabat to another Serie A defensive midfielder who can play in that deep pivot position, Napoli's Stanislav Lobotka, who was arguably in the team of the season last year. And he is primarily an in-possession player, not really a defensive-minded midfielder, and so I would definitely say that Amrabat probably outdoes him from a defensive point of view. However, when we look at Lobotka's FB Ref report from last season in comparison to Amrabat's, we can see that whilst Lobotka does look much better when it comes to his short passing, both in volume and completion, when compared to Amrabat, the Fiorentina man is just as good as the Slovakian in Naples when it comes to his medium and long passing, and significantly better when it comes to progressing the ball, arguably being a level or two above Lobotka when it comes to using his passing to progress the ball into dangerous areas. And so I think this puts to bed the misconceptions originating from the World Cup that Sofyan Amrabat is just a sole destructive midfielder and nothing else. For Morocco, Amrabat played as a deep single pivot in a defensively conservative 4-1-4-1, and so because Morocco relied on quick transitioning attacks, rather than focusing on a methodical possession-based approach, we didn't get to see what Amrabat can offer in the first phase of play, when his side is looking to build out from the back under pressure in their defensive third, or what he can do against low blocks, particularly where he can utilise his long passing ability to switch the play quickly, and his overall ability to circulate possession. Amrabat also has the press resistance that I think is crucial for any player in that single pivot position in Ten Hag's midfield, as this is the point of the team from which all the other nodes in the network are connected. And so during the build-up phase, Amrabat's ability to receive the ball with his back to goal and not panic whilst under pressure, but instead assess his options and look to shift the ball on, but also having the ability to turn backwards and swivel before driving past the oncoming pressing player is going to be essential. In terms of what these statistics say about Amrabat, we can see that whilst he doesn't attempt many take-ons, ranking only in the 34th percentile, when he does attempt to take on, he completes them around 70% of the time, which sees him sit in the top 5% of midfielders in Europe. However, I would say that Amrabat's ball carrying is few and far between. He does have the ability to explode past players in the centre of the pitch with the ball at his feet, but this is usually after a turnover, as a quick transition in attack is occurring, and there is vacant space in the centre of the pitch for him to burst into using his athleticism. Unlike Rodri or Rice, who rank significantly higher for metrics like progressive carries and carries into the final third, I don't think Amrabat excels as much at beating players in more congested positions, as this relies more on technical ability and agility rather than athleticism and power. I think from the other options on the market, Ibrahim Sangare and Maxime Kakare are a level or two above Amrabat in terms of their ball control in congested areas, when pure technique and quick thinking is essential. But Amrabat is probably the better all-round player for that single pivot role, being an exceptionally good decision maker in possession, and to be honest, he plays the game like like he's in his 30s, having a great level of composure and control in possession, despite him still being in his mid-20s at 26. And so this is why, despite me not thinking that Amrabat is an elite level midfield pivot just yet, I do think that if he's able to develop his ability to thread incisive passes into players between the lines, improve his play in congested areas, as well as developing his reading of the game overall, which I think will come as he gets into his late 20s, then I definitely think Amrabat has all the other attributes needed to reach that maybe not world class level, but definitely the elite level. Defensively, however, Amrabat's metrics don't actually look as impressive as you may think, as he does rank fairly low for most of his defensive volume metrics, and whilst he ranks around average for his interceptions, his low dribbles challenged and dribblers tackled metrics show that for Fiorentina at least, Amrabat certainly isn't this all-action, high-volume defensive midfielder that some may think. Whereas for Morocco at the World Cup, he ranked in the 70th to 90th percentile range for both his dribblers challenged and his dribblers tackled, which may be down to the fact that for Morocco, Amrabat played at the base of a pretty conservative counter-attacking system where the opposition had the ball the majority of the time, whereas at Fiorentina, Amrabat is playing at the base of a midfield of a team who had the second most possession in Serie A last season with 56%. And so the fact that Fiorentina have more of the ball could be the main factor accounting for Amrabat's low defensive volume numbers in Serie A. However, despite this, Amrabat does complete a high amount of the tackles that he does put in, ranking around the 85th to 90th percentile for the amount of challenges he has lost, as well as a percentage of dribblers he has tackled, showing that Amrabat is very calculated with his tackles and isn't going to race around throwing himself into tackles and potentially exposing himself in the same way that I often feel Fred does when he is pressurising an opponent in the centre of the park. From a defensive and pressing point of view, I think Amrabat's reading of the game is what he needs to improve most, as this will allow him to anticipate opposition forward passes more often and begin to increase his interception and block numbers, but as a backup to Casemiro, I certainly don't think this would be an issue. Tactically, Amrabat does lack versatility compared to other options, as he can only really play that number 6 position, capable of playing as the sitting single pivot in the build-up phase and in a double pivot in a deeper 3-2 block in United's possession system in the middle third. However, I do think it could be a better option to look at players who can play either Casemiro's role as a 6 or Mount or Fernandez's role as a 3-8, as if either of those two ahead of Casemiro were to get injured or fall out of form, none of Eriksen, Sancho or Fred fully convinced me that they would be able to replace Mount or Fernandez to the required level in all aspects of their game. Overall, Sofyan Amrabat is very much what you get in the tin. He's one of the best progressive passers and circulators of the ball as a deeper midfielder in all of Europe, having a wonderful passing range. He's definitely not got the press resistance of a Frankie de Jong or the ball control of a Rodri, but I would still say he has the ability to swivel out of pressure and also drive the play forward powerfully on occasion, probably to the level of which Casemiro provides. Defensively, Casemiro is far superior, however, and if Amrabat could manage to bridge that gap, he definitely does have the technical ability to be the Brazilian's long-term successor, but at the moment I do think there are a few better options on the market for around what Sofyan Amrabat would cost, which with West Ham already tabling a bid around £30 million reportedly, I estimate the end price will be around £35 million, and I will be analysing and comparing all of those options in a separate video, so if you do want to get notified when that video does come out, make sure you click the bell after you subscribe, and check out the description for a link to my Patreon and links to my other videos as well.